Let's talk politics this Thursday with our State House insiders, Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright, Republican strategist Dave Wilson. Thank you both for your time. Let's get started by talking about our lawmakers over in our nation's capital. Some Republicans this week talked about making cuts to Medicaid. I was doing some research here in South Carolina, and as of June of 2024, more than 1 million people here in South Carolina are on Medicaid. So I'm curious, how could Medicaid cuts impact South Carolinians?
Well, I think it's going to be devastating when you look at this proposed budget that Republicans have paved their way for, $800+ billion in Medicaid cuts, largest cuts in our nation's history. It's going to impact an already stressed South Carolina system because lawmakers on the Republican side in our state refuse to expand Medicaid when given the opportunity. Forget about turning away 44,000 jobs and the economic development like our neighbors in North Carolina have benefited from. The fact of the matter is you're going to see nursing homes close. We already have 13, 14 counties with no OBGYN, community health centers, and so forth. And it's not just going to impact the constituents that national Republicans are trying to indicate it will impact. Black, white, young, not so young, and everything in between will be impacted by these devastating cuts that Republicans want to implement when it comes to Medicaid.
One of the biggest things that they're working on right now, and you are seeing this happening everywhere, is what are the efficiencies that are going to have to come into government? Where can we turn around and start doing in government what we also expect to see happening in business and find those places where we can actually find efficiencies so that the dollars that we're spending can actually go to the people who need them. And I think this is a step that's in that direction that the Republicans in the U.S. House and the president himself are saying, listen, it's time for us to start putting technology to work and stop acting like we're in the 1950s anymore and start thinking about how do we do what we do and do it better.
Dave, no one would argue with the fact of running efficient, effective government. Republicans, remember, were in charge of the House for the past 2 years, so they had the ability from a budgetary standpoint to deal with that. But what you cannot argue is that Medicaid or Medicare, even Social Security, any of that, and try to overlay that with business. Business does not have to worry about a senior population like South Carolina has. Remember, no one retires and moves up north. Business does not have to worry about those who pay into the system that need those same benefits from the system. Business and government are two different things. People depend on the government who put their hours and their service and time into the government and expect to draw back their services. You tell seniors in Chapin or Swansea or any other place in the state where I live and where I'm from in other parts of the state that they cannot access Medicaid or Medicare or even Social Security as you know it and say the Republicans want to take that away. You get the response that I get when I hear from people who normally don't agree with me.
$850 million is a lot of money that can be saved if it can be done efficiently. So that's the place where we're looking at that right now going, we're not necessarily trying to cut services as much as we're trying to figure out how do we do what we do and do it better.
Well, Dave, you just talked about cutting services. President Trump this week also said that federal workers should expect for more job cuts. Some folks do say, hey, those job cuts, that impacts federal workers over in D.C. But we know that those jobs, some of them are remote. Some folks are employed right here remotely in South Carolina. So could we see some federal workers here in South Carolina being impacted by the job cuts?
I think you're seeing jobs being impacted up and down the entire East Coast. You're seeing it all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast, because what we're looking at right now is an unsustainable ability to continue to run up the country's credit card. I mean, think about folks at home. Think about what that means for you. If you keep running up the credit card, there comes a point in time when the bill comes due, and we're going to have to start asking ourselves the question, how much further can this go? This is what was being discussed yesterday in the president's cabinet meeting. How much further can we go and continue to sustain this level of spending before it catches up with us? That's a tsunami that none of us are going to be able to handle.
Dave, I would just respectfully argue that we saw the largest bloating in our debt and deficit under Donald Trump's last leadership because of the tax scam 2.0. I would also argue that Republicans voted Tuesday night to pave the way to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion to implement the 2.0 version of the tax scam that benefited the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. So when we talk about being fiscal responsible, I think we have to lay those responsibilities at the feet of those who are actually being reckless with their spending. And if you really look at what Doge is doing and you look under the hood and actually check the details, the money that they're advertising that they're saving in government by cutting these jobs that, by the way, we need, it doesn't add up. where they say billions is actually turned out to be hundreds of thousands in some cases. And keep in mind, Republicans have just as much of responsibility as relates to our government. They're not. But you ask workers at the VA and you ask patients at the VA, like my father, who, when thousands of workers are cut from the VA, what does that mean for them? You ask people at the University of South Carolina, ask some of these federal workers in South Carolina who are impacted by these cuts, what does a unelected billionaire mean trying to cut government to the bone to run it like a business, how that's going to impact everyday Americans, everyday South Carolinians.
I would love to be also able to have a government that's going to be able to fund the things that need to be done when my grandchildren are going to be around, because I think that's one of the things that they're talking about right now, Antoine. It is the services that need to be provided now and our ability to continue to provide those services down the line.
But Dave, I would just argue, do you think firing FAA workers when we've seen planes crashing in the air and all the incidents, do you think that makes sense? Do you think cutting people at HHS where you have measles outbreaks and Ebola and everything else happening, do you think those kind of cuts make sense? 1,000 workers at the VA, Department of Ed, do you think those cuts make sense in terms of trying to check a political box? Or do we really want government to be more efficient? And that means get rid of the bloated things of government, which you and I agree on, but not the critical services that government does provide.
And that's the question. I mean, you brought up something right there, Antoine, that you got to start asking, are they actually cutting air traffic control workers?
Yes.
Are they actually cutting the nurses?
Yes.
Are they turning around and doing these things? And if that's the case, we've got to see, okay, then the bloating that you and I both agree on, we've got to figure out where that bloating is coming from, because the bloating that is happening right now, eventually, let's be honest about it, all those dollars eventually flow into someone's pocket. And we're going to have to ask, is it going to come out of the taxpayer's pocket or not?
Well, I would tell you, Elon Musk is one of the biggest beneficiaries of that bloating, the billions of dollars of contracts that his companies have received, and he's the one doing the cutting of the bone to government. So I think we have to ask an honest question and look ourselves in the mirror.
Well, Antoine and Dave, thank you both for your perspective and your time. We always appreciate it here. Stay with